When you're in chasing energy, it sucks, doesn't it? It's not nice because you feel like something is slipping away from you. You've got to do something. All of that fear comes up and you feel like you're the one doing all the effort and holding the relationship together, which isn't a nice place to be, and it's not where you're going to stay, because in this video we're going to dive into why you might be doing this and the opportunity it is presenting you with for you to outgrow a pattern and heal something within yourself. And all of these lessons that I give to you, I'm giving to you from lived experience and from my own research. And really, this one is very familiar to me because I have very much lived this. Most of my life, I spent in some kind of chasey energy and always felt like I was the one who had to fix the relationship, always felt like I was the one doing the work, and if I didn't, then the relationship would fall apart. So I'm going to share with you lots of the lessons that I learned, and maybe you'll be able to relate. So before I get into this video, I have an announcement, which is that I have a new club and you can join this club, and it's called the Heartbreak Healers Club, which is for anybody who would like to dive into and heal the situation that you might be in with an ex. So you have felt heartbroken at some point, whether that was recently or you feel like you're still processing a breakup and you would like some support. Now, I have found that community is the absolute best thing when you meet other people who are going through or who understand where you're at. It's healing in itself to just be seen in that experience. But in this program, we're going to dive into lots of different areas about your ex, about you, the patterns that you and this person can break. We're going to learn how to go into acceptance and how powerful that is. We're going to be releasing some stuck emotions. You're going to feel so much lighter at the end of this 4-week program. So if you would like to join, we start on the 26th of April, which is a Saturday, and there'll be 4 consecutive weeks of live coaching sessions where I'm going to present some stuff to you. There'll be Q&A, and there's a community as well which you can chat to other people too. So if you'd like to join, I would love to see you there. I'm very excited about this. It is £97 to join at the moment, which is the early bird price, and you can find all the information in the link below. Right, so chasing, interesting. So I will tell you a bit about what I learned from this because you might be able to relate. So my first ever crush ever, I was like, I don't know, 10 or something like that. And I was chasing immediately before I could even think, before I had any idea about how to go about relationships. I started my romantic life chasing, and I felt like I had to. And the reason why I felt like I had to is because that's how I'd lived until that point. My dad had been away. My mum and dad broke up when I was 5, and my dad was always abroad, and when he was there, he was like a celebrity, and I felt like I needed to get his attention to be what he wanted me to be, to fit to the way that I thought would please him. And so I'd always been chasing before I even had a chance, before I even had any idea what I was doing. And then looking back, that led me to more chasing because I got little rewards from chasing. I sometimes got some attention. I sometimes got an acknowledgement. I sometimes got what I wanted. And that led me to believe that if I did that, then I would get what I wanted, which was to be loved, to be seen. And really, I never got that because I was always chasing, and therefore it led to pushing away, which is what I consistently did. And it's what happens in these anxious avoidant dynamics, is that the one who is more anxious unintentionally chases the avoidant away. These two different coping strategies are incompatible. They're incompatible, especially without awareness. And so this is where you can take responsibility for your side of the street, okay? Because the anxious triggers the fears of the avoidant, and the avoidant triggers the fears of the anxious, and the behaviors are completely incompatible with making a relationship work. Because when the anxious feels anxious, they start to pursue, and when the avoidant is pursued, the avoidant shuts down. right? So that triggers the anxious even more, and then they chase more. And so looking back, I realized that in relationships, that would be so activating for me. That would be so triggering if I, naturally was drawn to what was familiar to me, which was someone who is a bit distant, a bit unpredictable, a bit mysterious. Then I would find myself chasing, thinking that was normal, and then wonder why my love life had been such a car crash, basically. It had always been like that. And so when I started to realize, oh my God, hang on a minute. So before I could even think about how I wanted to show up or had any information, teaching, education about relationships or emotional dynamics, I didn't have a good start because I just assumed that I needed to chase in order for me to get what I wanted. But that wasn't true. That wasn't necessarily true, was it? Because actually, whenever you allow things to come to you, which had never felt safe for me, and maybe it didn't feel safe for you as well, because it doesn't feel safe to just sit back. Because what if your parents disappear? What if someone forgets about you? That's how it felt when you were young, especially for me. Like, my dad wasn't there, so if I didn't do something, like, will he ever come back? Will I be noticed? And a lot of people feel like this with parents who were busy, who had busy jobs, who were, had a lot going on. Maybe they were emotional. Maybe they had their own mental health problems. So it's like, if I don't do something, I'm going to be forgotten. My needs are not going to be met, and therefore I'm going to die. That's how it feels when you're younger. So it's survival, and you live your life then in survival mode, which means that relationships activate survival responses. Okay, so you feel very threatened when it comes to intimacy because it reminds you of the fear of death, essentially. So we have to get over the fear of death in these situations, because that's what this is triggering. We're thinking that we are not safe anymore, when actually we are safe. In these adult situations that we're in, we have the capacity to rewire our nervous system to teach ourselves that we're safe. And we can do this through practice of releasing that old stored memory that's in our nervous system using, I really like the release technique, or the Sedona method. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's really good. And it's just a practice of allowing those feelings to be there, accepting them rather than rejecting them, and then making a decision to bit by bit let them go. So this is one of the things that I do, but just being able to see what was going on for me was so helpful. Being able to see before I could even think. That's what I decided I had to do. Now I can think. Now I can decide that actually chasing is not what I'm going to do anymore. Chasing has not worked for me. And then all these fears comes up. Well, if I don't chase, then I'm not going to get what I want. But the thing is that where you got to start to really, this is where the pattern really starts to change, is that you've chosen people who you have to chase because that was what was familiar. And so if you stop chasing and they go away, then they were not for you anyway. But this is what happens as well when you stop chasing, is that the avoidance starts to feel safer, so they're more likely to come towards you. And you can start to rebalance out the dynamic for what it's supposed to be to make both people feel safe. But in an ideal world, the avoidant's going to do work on themselves too, because as soon as they get too close, they start to feel those fears of intimacy, of being seen, of being shamed, of not being good enough. And that perpetuates their pattern of distancing themselves and shutting down. So both people need to be able to see, but you can only work on your side of the street. That's all you can ever do. But in doing this, you're creating a very powerful domino effect on the rest of your relationships and your life. Because when you change the moves of the dance, everybody else has to change the moves of the dance too. Otherwise, they're going to stumble and fall down, which often is what happens when the dance starts to change. So don't be afraid of changing the moves of the dance and creating this domino effect, because at first it will be a bit stumbly, and that is what happens. The avoidant doesn't know what the hell is going on and starts to kind of freak out a little bit at first until they start to feel safer in the new dynamic. And that is if they're ready to do the work. So at first, not chasing is going to feel like emptiness. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel like there's a void, like you don't know what to do. You don't know if it's right because it doesn't feel right, because what has felt right has been chasing, to feel that uncomfortable sensation of, oh, I don't know if I'm safe. My nervous system doesn't feel safe. And so we try to get away from it and we avoid those uncomfortable feelings. So we're in avoidance, right? I've said this before. When you're chasing, you are in avoidance, right? So there's not much difference between you and the avoidant, because you're both avoiding discomfort in different ways. The anxious avoids it by chasing to try and cover up that discomfort, and the avoidant avoids it by shutting down, running away, and distancing themselves and distracting themselves, and both doing the same thing. So if you start leading the way, this is the thing, you've got to be the change in your life. Like when you start to be the change, people start to go, oh, what's happened to you? You seem different. And I'm not saying this to inspire you to kind of manipulate anyone, but I'm saying this because no matter what happens with you and your ex, right, or the person that you're thinking about, or the person that you're in a relationship with, you've got to change this for you. You've got to change this pattern, because you want to have healthy relationships where it's effortless, where you're not effortless, but like where it flows with a lot more ease than you doing all of the heavy lifting and you doing all of the work, right? You deserve that. And it's being able to train yourself that now you're safe, you're good enough, and that love doesn't need to be so hard. Love doesn't need to be so hard. And in reality, it never was, because you were loved the minute you set foot on this planet. I mean, the minute you showed up, you came into this world surrounded by and full of love. That's all you were, just a massive bundle of love. And that's who you still are. And the illusion based on our childhood and the way that we perceived life through that childlike lens is that we've taught ourselves somehow that we're not enough, and that's a lie. And this is where we can start to change the narrative and say, you know what, no matter what happened in my life, no matter what situation made me think that I wasn't enough, how people treated me or whatever, all of that now has become my perception of myself, and I'm deciding today that that's not true anymore. I've always been enough. And when you start to do that, you show up differently. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen all in one go. But over time, you start to this to become the new normal, and you start to question your motives. You start to question, why was I chasing? What was I chasing this person for? And often we're chasing it because we're really desperately seeking that safety in validation, which isn't love anyway, is it? And this is where this process can become really confusing, because your whole identity starts to change. You've identified with chasing. You've identified with your love life being this way. And then when you stop doing that and you start to, identify with a different thing, your whole self-concept begins to shift. And when that happens, things really do start to change. But there's a part in the middle where we go, oh, I don't like this because it's so unfamiliar and I don't know what's going on and I don't know who I am. And it's like an ego death, which is very beneficial to you at this point, because what you've been doing hasn't been working, has it? And it hasn't been working for the relationship that you had with this person or with other ones. And so this is how you start to change the pattern, as you start to really take responsibility for your side of the street, because it's very easy to blame the avoidant. They're very overtly difficult, right? But the anxious is also creating part of that dynamic. So it's really important that you go, oh shit, yes, I can see how I showed up. And that doesn't mean that it's your fault, but it means that this is a beneficial lesson to you that will help transform, potentially this relationship and all other relationships. I mean, the absolute, pot of gold situation is when the anxious starts to work on themselves and take responsibility and stop being the victim, and the avoidant also does that, and then both find a really beautiful connection. through that. That's like the ideal, isn't it? And if you want that, which I'm sure you do, all you can do is work on your part in it. Now you have to then surrender, hand it over to whatever you call it, God, higher power, universe, whatever. That, will the other person do it? Well, time will tell, you know. All you can do is lead the way and see if you have that domino effect on the rest of the world, which you will. So, yeah, I thought I'd share these lessons that have massively been true in my life and have really helped me change and step back and stop trying so hard. But it is a journey, and sometimes I still fall back into it because, you know, I'm human and by no means healed. But it's been a really big pivot in my life to be able to go, wow, before I could even think, I was chasing. I remember this guy called Andrew who I just loved. I thought I loved him. And I was like, my last day of primary school, and I was just energetically chasing him for the whole time, like obsessed with him. And I never had the courage to even speak to him, but I was always, he knew, because I would get my friends to talk to him and ask him what he thought about me, and he didn't ever really care. And on the last day of primary school, I finally plucked up the courage to ask him out. And I said, Andrew, will you go out with me? And he said, no. And then he walked off and I never saw him again. So, actually, no, I did see him again. I saw him again when I was 14 at a party, and he slow danced with me on the last song. And I didn't chase him. He came to me. So that was an interesting thing. But, you know, nothing ever came of that. I was 14. But you see, my whole life started with energetically chasing. And maybe you can look back and think, wow, poor little me didn't even have a chance. I didn't even have a chance to think. No one taught me. And I swear to God, and this is something I should do at some point in my life, there should be a curriculum in schools for teenagers to help them understand emotional dynamics, to prevent them from going through the shit that we all went through. Because no one has a clue what's going on when they start having relationships. They're given sex education, aren't they? But not emotional education in relationships, which causes so many problems and trauma. And then in our adult lives, we think, what the hell is going on? Why is it like this? But I swear, if we had education about emotional dynamics, that things that can happen based on your childhood and what you've been through, then so much would become clear for teenagers and then adults, and then life would be very different for people. Let me know what you think about that. I should definitely make some kind of curriculum and get it sorted into the schools, because I wish we were taught this stuff when we were younger, because it would have prevented so many things. I look back at my teenage years and I think, if I had known what I know now, or had some understanding, then I would have so much more compassion for myself, and then I wouldn't disapprove of myself so much, and I wouldn't have landed myself in these ridiculous situations with so many avoidants, you know. And now we can change that because we're older and we've got more knowledge, and hopefully that's what you're getting from this channel as well. But teach your kids this stuff, because it's going to help change the world. So hope you found this video useful. If you'd like some support working with me, I'm actually going to close my coaching for a while because, and I don't know how long, just because it's so full at the moment, but there's a few spaces left for packages or for single sessions, and I'm going to keep it open for the next 6 days, and then I'm going to close it down for a bit. So any information about coaching, just let me know. Or my Heartbreak Healers Academy, that's going to be a new exciting thing. And the Conscious Creators for June, that's going live. I've got some more spaces that I'm putting up to do a second cohort. So if anyone would like any information about any of these things, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.